welcome to the Savage Discipleship podcast. We're just a couple of Christian dudes here talking about some self-defense stuff and also just some life skills and just some things that you can apply in your life to maybe help you be more of a godly man and more of a protector.
Yeah, and so Derek and I have been talking about a couple topics we want to cover today. This is going to be kind of our viewpoints, our opinions, but it's going to be rooted in the faith, Christianity, so the Bible, and some of our, somewhat conservative, yet, relative opinions on some topics that we believe are important, especially nowadays more than ever when it comes to like self-defense, talking about being, provider, protector for your family, being a pastoral figure. So we're going to cover some topics today, and hopefully you guys enjoy.
Yeah. But first thing we wanted to discuss is like the importance of physical training, of actually, I'm not saying you have to be a bodybuilder or a triathlon athlete, but I do believe that you need to push yourself to some extent in a physical sense. For one reason, if you think about the people of antiquity, I guess if you want to say, for example, in Bible times, most people walked everywhere. That's what they did. They had to walk everywhere. They had to carry stuff. So people were a lot more resilient back in the day. And nowadays, you barely have to leave your house. You can get food. You could work from home. You could basically do everything from your house nowadays if you really wanted to. So being that we have access to so many modern comforts, we really don't know what resilience is, or we're just having to push yourself, or having to go. We really don't even know what our full potential physically is, and that's why I believe that pushing yourself to some extent in exercise kind of helps you tap into that, because you got to think about it. God did not make us to just sit on our butts and work on a computer, order food on our phones, and then not go anywhere. No, God made us for a purpose. He made us to do things. He made us to establish His kingdom on earth. You can't establish a kingdom by parking your butt in a chair.
Yeah.
So
there's this quote that I read about a month ago, and somewhat in line. It talks about physical fitness and physical training, and it says that a man who does not know the limits of his physical capabilities, and dies without ever pushing himself to his own physical limits, basically is a man who never knew his potential. So it's one of those things where, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to just, like Derek said, be a bodybuilder or try to achieve this superhuman, physical fitness level, but being active, being physically fit is really just building resilience. Physical fitness ties into mental fitness, and being well-rounded as a person. Studies have proven that at least 30 minutes of physical fitness every day improves your mood. It improves your hormones. It's not just mental, but it's physiological too, and biological. So there's a lot of things that we encourage fellow men to take pride in working out, being physically fit. However that may be, there's a lot of ways to do it. Derek trains MMA. I like to do some powerlifting. I like sports, running, and different things. Military training kind of forces me to stay fit. But aside from that, I would still do it because I know it makes a difference in my life. So
100%. Yeah. I would say in MMA, cardio is key. If you don't have cardio, you're going to be dead after like a 1 minute round.
Yeah, for sure.
So cardio is definitely important. But I could say, really attest to the mental clarity and just the better mood, because before I became a Christian, I would say I'm about 5'10". Right now I'm about 195, 200 pounds. But there was a time where I was like I weighed 245 and I was extremely overweight. This is right before I became a Christian, so I was like, slugging back the beer. And but shortly after I became a Christian, it's just like, I don't know, I guess you always say that old-fashioned statement, I had a come to Jesus moment. And I knew that something had to change. So it's like a flip just switched in my head and in my heart, and I really developed like a passion for becoming physically fit. And so I ended up losing all that weight, and then got into shape, and it's just, man, I feel like a whole new person. And I've been able to keep the weight off for, it's been like 12, 13, 14 years now. So, and it's I would never go back. So it's definitely makes you, I say, so much better of a person. For me, like it has increased mental, like I feel like I was cloudy headed before, but for some reason I feel like, just picture like a canal full of water that's just barely moving. It's real slow flowing, and versus for example, like down here in Florida, I don't know where you're from in the country, but if you're from Florida and you look at any canal has slow moving water in it, shoot, you could drop a quarter in there, and 3 inches after it goes into the water, you can't even see it because the water's so murky. But so compare that to like a mountain stream up in like the mountains of Colorado, how clear that water and how fresh that water really is. So picture that being your blood, like the blood in your body. If you're not exercising, that means your heart's not pumping, and it's not pushing that blood through your veins. That means it's moving slower, and over time you get stuff that builds up in your veins, and that could lead to whatever, heart attacks and stuff like that. But if you're getting your blood flow up and your heart's pumping fast, it's pushing your blood in there, so it's keeping your arteries and keeping all your veins nice and clean and clear. So that's one aspect of that. But I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to get too deep into giving you all the medical benefits of it. But I would say another aspect of it is just consider yourself, every environment that you're in your life, I always try to make it a point to be an asset in some kind of way. I don't ever want to be a liability to anybody. For example, like if you're going on a missions trip, and you're most likely going to have to carry some jugs or carry some bags full of clothes or supplies up a hill or up a mountain, or maybe you're going to have to walk a mile or so carrying stuff. If you're not in shape and you don't exercise at all and you go on that trip, it's going to wreck you. And not only are you not going to be able to perform the task that you were given, you're going to have people from the team that are going to have to take away their focus on their task to now tend to you, to help get you back to health and make sure you're not passing out, throwing up, or catching heat stroke. So that's one aspect of it. You want to make sure that you can be an asset to wherever you go. You don't want to be a liability. I think part of being a man is just being an asset to wherever God places you.
Yeah, 100% agree. I was just thinking about, as far as so I'm an officer in the Army National Guard, so I have like a responsibility to be a role model and a figure, right? They talk about military bearing, so your presence, your demeanor, but also your appearance is a big part of it. Being in front of soldiers, being a role model, and leading by example, you have to look the part, right? As much as it sounds vain, it's part of the pride of wearing the uniform and your responsibility to be in shape. So I've seen it even in the military. There's soldiers that their uniform is tight on them. It looks like it's not supposed to fit tight around the stomach area, tight around the waist area, right? But to be out of shape, or to be even as a Christian, if you're trying to be a disciple, if you're trying to be an evangelist, right, your presence and your first impression is key to those that you're trying to bring to God. And if you don't carry yourself in a way that's respectable, in a way that is makes you somebody that people can see themselves wanting to be around or wanting to be it's going to deter people from really actually wanting to listen to you. In my in my personal opinion, if somebody appears to be sluggish, lazy, maybe like excessively overweight, I tend to lose respect for that person. I mean, generally speaking, obviously, like there's situations where some people have, physical limitations, disabilities, things of that nature. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a person who willingly is like just lazy and does not exercise, does not take care of themselves. And they do it to themselves, right? One way or another, it's a lack of discipline. It's, they put themselves in an environment and maybe they know it. Maybe they're stuck in a rut. But I think nowadays, more than ever, there's so much information out there that's free. How to get in shape, how to manage your time. I think Derek and I are probably some of the most busiest people that I know of, and we make time to do physical fitness. He's got, 4 kids he's raising. I've got 2 jobs, between the military and my full-time job as a financial advisor, and we still manage to and take our time to take care of ourselves, right? Being responsible for a family, being a provider, being that protector. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family to be ready for anything that comes your way. Taking care of yourself for your health in the long run is going to take care of your family.
100%. Yeah, and you got to think about it too. It's your body is the greatest asset that God has given you. For example, like when you think about, I'm not sure if you who are listening are hunters or if you're into guns or whatever, but me personally, I would not like to take a gun that has never been cleaned or maintained out on a hunting trip. I just wouldn't want to do that because it's not going to be reliable. So in the same token, if you're not really taking care of your body, which is your greatest asset that God has given you, then you can't really expect to be reaching your full potential if you're not taking care of your main asset, being your body. And I think first and foremost, from a biblical standpoint, the Bible says that our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. And if you're not, if you go to a church, if you walk in the front doors of a church and it's like, for example, you pull up in the parking lot, there's weeds growing everywhere, there's potholes all in the parking lot, the building doesn't look like it's been painted in 20 years, mildew up the side, vines growing up into the windows, you're going to be like, what the heck is going on here? You're going to be like, if the pastor really doesn't care about taking care of this building, then why the heck is he going to worry about?
Exactly.
Why is he really worried about preaching the word of God with clarity and with precision? Because it doesn't look like it from the outside. Yeah. And I really feel strongly too. I want to say that in no way, shape, or form are we trying to shame or hurt anybody, but I do think this is a problem with society nowadays, that as men, I do believe that we are supposed to say things to each other that challenge each other. So I don't want you to misconstrue challenging. So in no way are we shaming or trying to put people down, but we are challenging you to become the best that you can be, because we know that you can be if you apply yourself, and it's who God has called you to be, is to be everything that you possibly can. So don't sell yourself short to to just overindulgence and stuff like that. I mean, it's instant gratification. It feels really good in the moment, but what is that saying, that it's instant gratification postpones long-term satisfaction or fulfillment, something like that. And those I think I'm misconstruing it, but it's basically like if you're seeking instant gratification, then you're deferring your long-term fulfillment. So basically, you're going to get your instant gratification, but you're erasing your long-term fulfillment, because you feel good in the moment, but an hour, 2 hours later, you're going to feel like crap. You're going to have to be full of regret, and man, I shouldn't have really ate that much, or man, I need to do this, or I need to do that. So it's like when you practice self-discipline of, basically self-control. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, man, I like to eat, but I have to, I keep that restrained within, like, during the week, I stick to my diet. I mean, I still work out. I try to push myself for 7 days a week. But, you know, on the weekends, I'll have, you know, some ice cream, you know, have a cheat meal, just so you don't, like, crack at the seams. Because you gotta have a cheat meal.
And there's a cheat meal, not a cheat day. All right.
Yeah.
Some people are out there like, oh, I got the whole Sunday to cheat. I mean, Athlete Next, you know, I don't know if you watch him. Cavalier. He talks about like
that.
Yeah, he's like, if you're trying to build a six-pack, he's like, you want to stay away from a cheat meal. He's like, but you definitely got to stay away from a cheat day. Because some people will take the whole Sunday and they'll just eat, like, you know, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
I'm guilty of that too, I'll be honest. But it's like, but I've still been able to maintain. You got to think, as long as you're burning what you're putting in. So
yeah.
But so on another aspect of that, I mean, you just want to make sure that you're an asset wherever God places you, and you know, you just want to be able to offer people, you know. We are here as Christians on the earth to benefit the lives of other people. So the more in shape, the more capable you are, the more of a benefit that you are going to be able to, you know, be in the lives of somebody else. And I guess that's where this really ties into where I believe that there are three main responsibilities that God has given men, and I think they're pretty much summed up in 3 P's, which are pastor, provider, and protector. So I believe strongly that these are the 3 God-mandated responsibilities that He's given to men. And you got anything to touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, so we talked about pastoral, you know, being the leader in the house, as far as you know, being the one to, like Derek said, you have to hold each other accountable, as far as, you know, especially in the marriage, right? The man should be responsible for, and it goes two ways, but if you think about it as the man, as the head of the household, the one that's supposed to be bringing his family closer to God, right? It's not just in telling his wife, hey, we need to go to church, or this is what you need to do. It's teaching the children too, I think, and Derek can speak on this better than me, but you know, raising your sons and daughters to be of the faith, and encouraging them, right? You know, really being a role model, setting an example for why they should go to church, right?
100%. Yeah. For example, I was listening to a sermon last week about biblical manhood, and it was really good what he said. He said you shouldn't, for example, I would say, maybe it's just in America. I can't really speak to third world countries because I haven't really attended a church there, or you really know that dynamic. But here in America, for example, like we kind of feel that, okay, we take our kids to church, and then we drop them off at children's church, and then the children's pastor teaches them. And a lot of, you know, it's easy to kind of fall into that groove where you're like, okay, well, you know, the children's pastor's got a degree in children's ministry, so that's their job. But that's not really how it should be. In my opinion, like your walk with God, or your kids learning at children's church should be like supplemental to what you're teaching them. So it is your responsibility first to teach them in your house. You know, and this is always something too, it's like you got to kind of pray for strategy if you don't know what to do. Some people are just really good at teaching kids. Like my wife is phenomenal at teaching kids, so I've had to kind of learn from her a little bit, and then, you know, also ask the Holy Spirit for help, like, you know, because it can be really awkward getting off the ground. You know, it just feels really weird talking about this, especially with kids. Their attention span is like,
I'm not good with kids.
Yeah,
my wife is. She works with kids all the time. I mean, I will be good with kids, but you know, I'm deferring that for later.
But yeah, so but first and foremost though, like your kids learning the faith and then learning how to keep their faith is your responsibility first. Like we shouldn't, as fathers, pawn that off as a responsibility of a children's pastor or, you know, somebody in ministry at church, we need to be the, you know, teaching them the foundations of that in our home. And also, you know, aside from teaching your kids, you also need to be leading your wife, you know, and that is something that, I'll be honest, I struggled with that for a long time, just because, you know, I was really kind of nervous about maybe doing it wrong or, you know, just messing up. But so I finally overcame that and have been able to be consistent with it. But, you know, leading your wife through the Bible, and I heard the same pastor I was just mentioning a few minutes ago. He said he was challenging. I really like the way this guy preaches, because he's a Vodi Bakum. I'm not sure if anybody's heard of him, but he's one of my favorite preachers. But the way he says things, it's so direct, and it's like, but it's very challenging, which is awesome. But he said, "Sir, are you washing your wife in the water of the word, sir? Are you bathing her in prayer, sir?" I'm just like, wow, that one cut deep. And I'm like, shoot, man, you know, that's something that's our responsibility. We should be washing our wives in the water of the word and bathing them in prayer. That's what we should be doing. It's as the, you know, you're the spiritual guide and the spiritual protector of your home. You know, you are responsible for setting your kids on a straight and narrow, because I know if y'all been paying attention, you know, the world is getting pretty daggum crazy right now.
Having a moral, foundation is more important than ever.
Yeah, people look down the front of their britches and don't even know which gender they belong to. I mean, that's just you know, that's we're in trouble sometimes. So us as fathers, we need to really build the faith of our kids and send them out, you know, train them, and so they're not mentally and emotionally feeble, and when they go out they get destroyed by, you know, all of this nonsense that's out there, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously the spirit of the enemy. So it's apparent everything that's happening nowadays is it's the devil. He's deceiving everyone, right? And it's becoming almost too normal. I mean, this is like, it's predicted. This isn't anything that's like surprising. If you are a Christian in the faith, you would know what's happening is the spirit of the devil. I mean, it happens through lies, right? Deceit, temptation. Everything's vain nowadays, and that's why I mentioned the vanity thing, because it's not a thing to be physically fit for vanity purposes, right? I'm talking about fitness. I'm not talking about appearance, right? As far as appearance, like having the biggest muscles and whatever, looking good for whatever vanity's sake. And then as far as being like that, the pastor of the household, and leading children. I mean, when you mentioned like leading your sons and being that like example, right? I think about, and this is something our pastor talked about, is Jesus, when you come to the doors, the gates of heaven, and he says, well done, my faithful servant, right? You want to almost have that same reaction to your children, right? Well done, my faithful son, that you have lived the life that I've taught you and made that example for you. You want to be the example like Jesus is for us, right? To your own children. So reading the word and being more closer to, the likeness of God is going to allow your children to then try to be more like you, in the flesh, but also the spiritual sense.
Yeah, 100%. And the Bible talks about also comparing children to arrows, and it says, "Blessed is the man whose quiver is full." So when you think about arrows, it's like because you're shooting them out, and you don't want to be sending out broken, busted arrows. You want to be sending out top of the line, whatever, titanium or carbon fiber strength, arrows that have the sharpest broadheads on them. You want, if you're going hunting, you want to have the best arrow, the best broadhead that you can have. So picture that molding your kids into being that, into being arrows. You know, you want to be able to send them out with power, not send them out, you know, with like a busted field tip where they hit the target and then shatter into a bunch of pieces. You know, let's not let's just consider our kids as, you know, I would say almost weapons for the kingdom of God, sending them out to make a difference for him. And I guess tying back into, we'll touch on that later, but so the second P is provider. So the second responsibility of a man, given to the man from God, I believe, is being a provider of the home. You know, the Bible says if a man does not work, he does not eat. Now, obviously, there is, you know, I'm not talking about people who maybe have suffered some type of accident where it physically disables them from, you know, from working or from, you know, doing physical things or just being able to get out there and actually get a job. But I do not believe if you are a able-bodied male that you should be a stay-at-home dad. Now also, I don't want you to get it twisted either, because sometimes there are seasons, for example, like say you're studying to take your career to the next level, so you have to take a break and focus on your training or your schooling, or you're trying to go for like some type of professional license. So there is a season, you know, I had a couple seasons like that in my life where I was pursuing professional licenses and schooling, so I had to focus on that. You know, but as soon as I was done with that, as soon as I got the license, I was right back out there. So I do not believe from a biblical standpoint that it is a man's purpose to be stay-at-home dad. I know that modern culture will try to convince you otherwise. And again, I'm not saying this to try to shame anybody. I'm just giving you a God-mandated biblical challenge that, man of God, you are supposed to be a provider and a go-getter, getting out there and providing for your family. You know, just picture how stupid it would be. For example, like 500 years ago, you get a family that lives out in the woods, and the man's at home and they're taking care of the babies, and the woman's going out killing the moose and bringing it back, skinning it, gutting it, and, you know, putting the meat on the table. To me, that just looks ridiculous, you know. So just try to connect that, you know, because I believe it is the man's job. So again, I'm not trying to shame anybody, so I hope you see this as a challenge and not as and you know, if it's something maybe you need to pray about, you know, maybe you need to pray about it, but I believe this is something you should pray about and take it, you know, study the Word, look in the Word, look what the Bible has to say about it. But yeah, brother, I believe you're supposed to be getting after there and bringing home the bacon. Yeah,
I think yeah, my take would be, I know the current society is all about equality. I think that women can work, they can be strong, right? They can do almost, if not everything a man can do, right? But I think physiologically, I mean, and I think we were created by God to be the hunter-gatherer, right? And like Derek said, in the ancient times, antiquity, you know, men would go out, we would gather, and the woman would stay back, and they would take care of the children. But there are some cultures where women go out too. I think it's doable. I think it's possible, right? But we're also physiologically built. You know, it's what's that? Anthropology. Like, our bodies are literally built in a way where we're supposed to be hunter-gatherers and supposed to go out and right, you know, fight and, you know, prey on animals to bring home the bacon, like Derek said.
Yeah.
So, it's not to take away from what women can do. I mean, they have things that they give childbirth. Like that's something probably that most men wouldn't be able to do. I mean, we would do it if we had to, but we prefer not to.
I don't know, man. Hey, I'm telling you, I was there when them babies were born, and
exactly.
I was like,
that's a different type of strength.
Oh,
and
man.
yeah, I mean, and honestly, I think women are more suited for certain things. Like, I always say women are sometimes a little bit more analytical. They tend to be, I mean, in finances, women tend to be more conservative than men. They tend to be more, less risky. And that could be a good thing, right? It's checks and balances with everything. And I think that's something that, Derek and I agree upon. Not everything is, one-sided, right? But you also, as a Christian, some things you can't, be too, not to say not open-minded, but you have to stand your ground on certain topics, right? I mean, when it comes to like pro-life, obviously, things of that nature, things that are, biblically sound, that are going to say this is right, this is wrong, right? Sin is sin. Like you can't negotiate with God on sin, right? What's termed as sin is sin, and we're not gonna backtrack on things like that, obviously. But obviously, some topics can be talked about, right? I think that me and Derek are probably some of the most open-minded Christians and forward-thinking Christians, right? But at the end of the day, we're also sounded in faith. So a lot of the things that we're going to talk about, we're always going to tie back to it, because that's what we know as the truth, right? And it's really navigating current-day modern life with the foundation of the Bible. So. Yeah.
I mean, for example, they're 100%, most families now, I would say mainly because of the cost of living, like most families, both husband and wife are working, and that there ain't nothing wrong with that. I mean, my wife gets after it. She's a extremely hard worker, and I really admire her for how far she's been able to go in her career because of her hard work and dedication. So don't get me twisted on that. Your wife doesn't have to stay at home. But I don't believe you should be staying at home while she's going to work. I believe you should be contributing. And there's nothing wrong with, if your wife makes more money than you, that's perfectly fine, as long as you're out there, doing the best you can, like the Bible says, to do all things unto the Lord. So if you're out there doing the best you can unto the Lord, then you're doing God's will. So just keep that in mind. But for example, like we talk about changing times, I've heard so many people say sometimes like, well, times are different, the Bible says that, but times are changing. I'm like, oh, well, okay, but Jesus said that, the Bible says that he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So God is the same today as he was back in the times of Noah or when he created Adam. So if our God doesn't change, and his mindset and his values and his outlook and his commandments haven't changed, then we don't have the ability to be able to change the things that he's already established. So times may change, but the God that we serve does not. So our values should remain unshaken and unchanged, regardless of the pressure of society or whatever. So in my opinion, if you start to change because of the pressure of society puts on you, then like the Bible says, you're shrinking back. You're basically giving the enemy's pushing the envelope, and he's pushing onto your territory, and you're letting him take it. And that's not what we're supposed to be.
It's like tug of war. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not supposed to give him any quarter.
Exactly.
He ain't taking nothing. We're not supposed to let him have it either. So, but yeah, so the third P is a protector. This one is kind of like, to me, it's kind of been a touchy topic because, I am a firearms instructor, and I am like I would say I am most passionate about teaching church folks like how to have a successful security team and plan, because of this active shooter crap that we have going on in this country. So you get a lot of folks that are like, I've heard statements say, oh man, I could never lay my hands on another person who is created in the image of God. I'm like, okay, well, what if that other person created in the image of God is attempting to murder your wife and children? Are you just going to stand there and let that happen? If you do, you're a coward. I mean, that's it, like no mincing words. I do not for 1 second believe that that's a godly thing. So we got to make a separation between, for example, persecution and self-defense. So Jesus said that we would be persecuted. So if you live in a third world country where you have no access to anything to be able to adequately defend yourself, and people come in and they end up slaughtering the whole church specifically because they are Christians and they're worshiping God, that is persecution. Okay, but here in America, we have access to tools to be able to defend ourselves. But I guess putting the church part aside, if you are, for example, leaving the grocery store with your wife and you are an able-bodied, strong man there with your family and your kids, and a man comes up, pulls a knife, and demands, all your stuff, or he's gonna hurt your family. Are you just gonna let him hurt your family? That's not your God-mandated purpose. Your God's mandated. God positioned you there as the able-bodied, strong man to stand in the gap and to protect your family. So when you think about, this is something else. We talked about not pawning off the responsibility of pastoring your kids off to the youth pastor. You can't pawn off the responsibility of protecting your family to the police, the fire department, the military. They are a resource that are provided to us because of our tax dollars, and thank you to all those men and women who are serving as police officers and firefighters and military. But for example, an average police officer, if they're not standing right there in front of you witnessing this, they're about at minimum 90 seconds out, and a lot can happen in 90 seconds. So if you are there, present in the moment and able to stand in the gap, it is your responsibility as the man to take care of that. And unfortunately, I mean, for example, if you are able to, self-defense 101, you should try to get your family away if the assailant is far enough and you have enough time to get away, or if you are able to verbally, de-escalate the situation. But if neither one of those options are available, and this guy is adamant about receiving violence, then if he's adamant about dishing the violence out, then you're going to have to, unfortunately, act in a violent way to keep him from inflicting violence on your family. But
yeah, it's so, I mean, at the beginning, Derek said it's, the persecution piece is for those that are defenseless, right? And when we talk about self-defense, I mean, it says it's, you're defending yourself against an attacker that's targeting you, right? Or others, right? You could be a vigilante, having the ability to defend yourself, whether it's with a firearm or without a firearm. I mean, we believe in firearms as a tool, an extension of yourself. It's not a weapon of its own, it's an inanimate object. It doesn't think for itself, right? Guns aren't necessarily the bad thing. It's the person who is behind the gun, right? Yeah. And being able to carry, right, concealed, I think a concealed weapon is a lot more valuable than an open carry, to be honest, because it doesn't put a target on your back, right? But if somebody targets you or somebody in your vicinity, whether it's within, like a public place, a grocery store, whether it's in your place of worship, having the ability to defend yourself and others, I think is your responsibility, right? As a concealed weapons owner, as a man, as a protector for your family, for your friends, for your loved ones, right? And there's, escalation measures that we practice in the military. Everyone thinks the military is just trained to kill, right? It is part of our training, but that's like always going to be usually the last resort. If there's a, threat, or somebody who's becoming hostile, we're always going to escalate, in levels depending on their aggression, right? And sometimes it requires swift action if it becomes something where there's an imminent threat where they're posing, risk to someone's life. But that's made on the spot decision, just like law enforcement, right? They try to use non-lethal weapons first in certain scenarios if they can. Again, it's all based on the scenario. But if somebody points a gun at you or someone else, at that point, you're not going to try to talk the person down, right?
No.
You don't take a chance that they might put their weapon down. At that point, they've probably already made their decision. So just putting themselves in that scenario, they've basically assumed the risk that they may actually lose their life themselves. And most of these active shooters do. They know what they're going into, that they're probably not going to end up surviving. And if they do survive, they regret it because of the punishment they're going to receive, whether they're in prison or, if they, most of them end up taking their own lives or get killed in it. But if they do survive, it's something that they're going to live with the regret, But again, we should always be ready to protect. We shouldn't be. I had a client of mine. She told me, when it's your time, it's your time, and I was like, yeah, but those are things that you can't necessarily control, right? I'm talking about like you have a final destination moment, right, or something like your medical, you have a heart attack, something like that. Whatever the case might be that you had no control over. Again, in a scenario that you have control over, you have the responsibility, right? And this is why we talk about being physically fit, being ready, and trained, because you might be in a scenario that you didn't ask for, and you owe it to yourself and everyone around you to be ready for it. So
yeah. And the thing is too, one of my favorite quotes, I forget who exactly said it, but one of the numerous mindset books that I've read. It was probably a book that I read about active shooter training, and it says in a life or death situation, it's going to require a uncompromised burst of savage violence. So it's like, when you think about that, that's kind of like, I would say almost all of those words in that sentence are pretty heavy. So uncompromised burst of savage violence. That's what it's going to have to require. You just can't like willy-nilly, I guess you'd say like slap the guy and expect him to drop the knife.
You see the response to the Nashville shooting. Those guys were, they had the courage to, first thing you learn about when you're engaging an enemy, especially in close quarters, you put your, frame oriented towards the enemy.
Yeah.
That means that you put your chest oriented with your weapon pointed towards the enemy. You don't hide. You don't, peek around the corner. This isn't Rainbow Six, where you're holding a position. Because your timing is literally going to cost other people's lives.
Yeah,
the slower you move, that, the active shooter could be killing other people.
Yeah, or cost you your own life.
Yeah.
And this is why I think too, like, I see a lot of people, like Nusha just talked about, like guns and how, they are this is not a real gun. This is just a training. This is what I use in my classes. It's a laser gun, to teach fundamentals. But a gun without the operator, if I'm not holding it, it's just an inanimate object. It's not going to do anything at all. Just sit there. So when you pick this thing up, it's like, for one, if you're not practicing with it, it's okay. Now you've got to you've got a high performance tool that you're holding in your hand, but your ability to drive that tool is subpar. So you can't expect the tool to perform well if your ability isn't up to par.
Yeah.
So for example, like if you think about a carpenter's confidence isn't in the tools that he owns. His confidence is in his skill to operate the tools, because without the carpenter's skill, those tools are just inanimate objects. But it's the carpenter that makes them perform works of art, or make works of art basically out of wood. So yeah, but also too, like Nusha was saying, it's not, a gun is just, it's just one part of self-defense. It's not, this shouldn't be, for example, like you got a roofer. The only tool in a roofer's belt isn't the hammer. Yeah, it's a big part of his job, but that's not his only tool. He's got many other tools. He's got his blade for cutting felt paper and for cutting shingles. He's got so many other tools that he has access to. It's not just the one thing. So you shouldn't only be relying on your gun. For one, you got a guy that's got a knife or a gun pointed at you, you're not going to have time to draw your weapon. If you try to go for it, the guy's just going to shoot or stab you, and then it's over. So you're going to need to know some type of, physical disarmament. I'm not saying that you need to go through like Navy SEALs budge training, but there are plenty of trainings out there. I offer some. If you're in the South Florida area, hit me up. But at the dojo I go to, we practice constantly on like having a gun on us. Obviously not a real gun, but we have a practice pistol that we pretend like it's, the person draws the weapon and is actively pointing at us. And then we take control of it and then get it away. So, and even when I teach church active shooter training, from when I was putting together the curriculum, when I was studying myself, trying to understand active shootings and just trying to acclimate myself and so that I could teach it, what I noticed is throughout all the videos and the horrific videos that I watched, some of these church shootings, the active shooter got up during the service and he walked up to the church security team, and he had the gun on them. Now when they went to draw, they obviously, their first and only reaction, because their only reliance was on their gun, they had no other tools in their tool belt, so the only thing they knew how to do was draw their gun. So obviously when they went to draw their gun, the shooter just shot them, and they unfortunately lost their lives. Those shootings that I observed, they were within distance where these men could have more than possibly taken control of these weapons, especially if it's a long gun. A long gun are a lot easier to take control of. So if you are part of a church security team, or I just think common knowledge, man. I mean, I just believe as a man, get out and train this stuff, man. You might really find out who you are. It's, even if you're never going to use it. I train like this all the time, and I pray to God almost daily that I don't ever have to use these things. But if it ever happens, I'm going to be ready. So I just challenge you to do the same. Train with these things. Go out and roll around on the mat with some buddies. You might really enjoy it. Tap into who God has made you to be.
Yeah.
That's I never did it for, I wish I would have gotten a hold of martial arts a lot sooner in my life, but it's like, I don't know, I love it so much. And you find community there, and man, there's just so much benefit to just training and being prepared. It just builds your confidence, and I just think it makes you a better person. It helps you tone it down emotionally, because you know of your capabilities, and your desire isn't to hurt somebody. So in my opinion, you'll be a lot more, you won't be as emotionally, what's the word? Emotionally
triggered.
Yeah, emotionally triggered, because you know that you don't want it to go to that place.
Yeah. Well, something they taught us when I did Muay Thai about 10 years ago. I got my first band around my arm. They give you a certificate, and then they actually have you like sign something that says like, you will not use what you've learned in this class to, harm others outside of self-defense. It's basically, it's saying, like, what you're capable of. This doesn't mean you're going to go out there and just pick on people and try to bully them, right?
Don't be a dirtbag.
Don't take advantage of it, right? This is like a responsibility again. A lot of this comes down to discipline and responsibility. I mean, the title of this is we're savage discipleship, right? I mean, to be a disciple is probably the hardest thing that you could do as a human, right? Is to follow the word in, especially these times that we're in now. I'm sure other generations have said the same thing. I think more and more closer to the end of times it's getting harder and harder, relatively speaking. Culture's changing, right? It's not the 50s anymore where everything's, cookie cutter, lines are being blurred. There's a lot of things that we need to be prepared for. So, being able to defend yourself, really. I mean, we're talking about this is the basics. This is your anatomy. You're built to be able to, your body is made for fight or flight. You have responses that come out in these scenarios, but the more that you train yourself to build that resiliency, to be able to control, the adrenaline that hits your body when there's moments of stress, either through training, like physical training, there's like ice baths. That's something that I'm getting into. I'm waiting for my chiller to come in, but I have an ice barrel. I've done it many times, and it's something that you actually, before you even get in the ice barrel, you start getting feelings of like stress. It's like adrenaline. It's the same type of stress that I get when I do public speaking. Before getting up in front of people or having to do a presentation, I get that sense of like stress where I'm like, all right, like I can feel my heartbeat faster. You feel like your palms sweating. I get that same exact feeling before I get in the ice barrel. But what I'm doing is I'm conditioning myself to be able to overcome it, doing an ice barrel challenge. It's almost like, practicing public speaking, getting better, getting more used to it is actually going to allow you. Same concept with training. Before you train and spar with somebody, maybe you're going to beat somebody and that one you don't get stressed about. But then you get the guy who's like, he's pretty good, right? Especially when it comes to like boxing and kickboxing. I used to get stressed when I went against one of the guys who's like a pro now, because I'm like, dude, this guy's going to punch me in the face a couple times and it's going to suck. But you know what? That makes you better and stronger. Yeah. So you have to overcome your fears. Yeah. I'm sure you guys can probably tell from the camera I got punched in the face pretty good the other night at training. But it's good though. It helps you grow. Teach you to keep your hands up. Like Nisha said, it teaches you more and more how to mitigate, the feelings of stress, and it just makes you a better person, makes you stronger, in my opinion. But like savage, the title of the podcast is Savage Discipleship, and that quote that I mentioned a little while ago about an uncompromised burst of savage violence. So, given the current climate of our country and just the world about how everything is, there is no like soft or candy coated way to approach Christianity. It literally does take uncompromised bursts of savage violence to really apply that savage violence toward living out your faith, because daily we're bombarded with nonsense from everywhere, and our faith is being challenged daily. So you literally have to live out your faith in a savage way, and if you don't have that mindset to where like I'm gonna be a savage in this, which means like, in my opinion, it's not anything detrimental. It's like I'm gonna live out this to the fullest of my ability, and I don't care what the world or what the enemy throws at me. I'm gonna live it. I'm gonna live out my no holding back. I'm living out my faith. Savage violence towards hell. Like Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, but the violent take it by force. So
That's what we are here to do. We're here to establish the kingdom. And that does take spiritual acts of savage violence, you know. Now, I'm not saying that's like standing out, you know. It's 100% in no way, shape, or form telling people that God hates them for their sin. That's not what you should be doing out there, picketing and stuff like that. Let's not
No.
Don't get it twisted. It's just basically when your faith is challenged, when you're maybe being persecuted at work for being a Christian, stand firm in your faith. Who cares what those other men think? You know, it like, for example, it takes a weak man. Any man could go along with the crowd, go with the flow, but it takes a strong, savage man to stand up for his faith when everybody else around him is not doing what is right, but he wants to stand up for what is right. So, yeah, just
This is So Nikki and I, we went to the Wicked, the play last night. It's like a musical. With you know, the Wicked Witch of the West from the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Well, she's portrayed as evil, right, in the Wizard of Oz. Like, but it shows really she stood up to the wizard who was actually corrupt, and she was like a savage, right? Part of the play, she like levitated. It was like near the end of it when she got her powers, and she stood up against everybody, and she went on her own. And that's what it's like to be a Christian. I mean, you have to sometimes separate
aside
yourself
from being a witch.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's that part, obviously, but as far as, I mean, the you know, the moral of the story was, it showed the reason why she did what she did. It showed like the trials and tribulations, but she still stood firm in what she believed. Against opposed to what everyone else. And we're the military is 1%ers. We talk about, you know, those that serve. It's like less than 1%. It's the same thing with Christians. I think actual Christians that they say like, oh yeah, America's a Christian country. I mean, sure. I think it was founded on Christian values. I think that there's a lot of people that say they're Christian. If it's not half, maybe less than half now. But the actual people that exercise their faith on a daily basis and, you know, are disciples, it's probably close to 1%ers. You know, I don't know the statistics, but we're talking about from experience, from actually knowing others. I mean, it's hard. I'm gonna be honest, like you work in the world, you live in the world, but you have this faith within you, and sometimes it is hard to be a disciple and to talk to others about it. Earlier when Derek was talking about he had fear of leading his own wife, and that's somebody who he probably has the closest relationship out of anyone in the world. I think about that with strangers. It is fearful, it is difficult, right? You don't know what to say, you don't know if you're going to say the right thing and the wrong thing. And just like the whole ice barrel thing, and just like the physical training, you have to overcome that fear sometimes just by doing it, and it takes practice. So you know, the more you get to know people, the more comfortable you get, the more you can, you know, speak to them and you know, preach the gospel, and you know, I think I've felt that in my own life, right, with others. You know, in the military, it's like, where do I stand? Where do I draw the line? I have to be careful in what I say in regards to my faith and what I put out there, because I don't want to come off as like overbearing, or, you know, like people are like, oh wow, like, you know, he's pushing this on us and stuff like that. So, you know, this is an outlet for Derek and I to be able to talk about, you know, because it is tough nowadays, right, to go out there and just say it. I mean, Derek's had almost persecution at work. I mean, he works with, you know, construction men and people that don't have the faith, and he's had to stand strong in it from his experience. Likewise with the military. I mean, the military is not, there's a lot of savage, you know, Christian things that happen in the military, right? You know, and it's hard to be Christian and live out those values in the military, just because of all the temptation, all the, you know, I don't know, not blasphemy, but debauchery is something that we like to say.
Debauchery,
just men being men, but it's one of those things where, you know, there's psychology talks about, you know, the crowd, you know, you egg each other on to just be, you know, just it's not Christian like values, right? You know, whether it's, you know, just talking about women or cursing or you know, just doing things that aren't Christian sound. So it's tough.
That's why it's good to get together with Christian men and get on the mat, you know. throw some punches, do some rolling.
Yeah.
You know, and then what's that saying? It was like a World War II saying from with this guy. It was a soldier, and he said when it comes down to it, he says there are no atheists in foxholes. So I was thinking about that today.
Oh, like, it's true.
When it comes down to
it, you know. Yeah, I think deep down inside, I mean, most people believe in God, right? I think it's just what we're talking about is like actually like being intentional about it. So
yeah, living. You know, yeah. It takes so much more of a man to actually live out his faith than to just, I would say, to, you know, in a dying moment cry out to God. But it takes so much more to live your faith. And yeah, but we could expound on that in the next episode. I want to share a bit of my testimony too of what God has brought me through, and how you know, the things that I've been through in life, and how my faith has stood, and just hopefully it'll offer some kind of encouragement to y'all. But man, you know, I feel like this has been a good first episode.
Yeah.
So second episode, because we had a little prelude there, but yeah, I mean, shoot, stay tuned, guys. I mean, you got so much more to talk about, and if y'all have questions or, you know, gripes or comments, feel free to drop them in the comment section, and you know, we love to engage with you guys. You know that that's one of the things we talked about too. We want to engage with people, not just like throw stuff out there, and you know, we want to encourage people to engage.
Yeah, so, fellowship, build a community around it.
Yeah. Let's build a community of.
We're open to it. Like I said, I mean, if we could be more, I don't know, engaging, entertaining, certain topics you want us to cover, whatever, just give us feedback. We're thick-skinned, you know. I think we don't have experience doing this. I mean, I watch, you know, a lot of podcasts and a lot of guys talking about whatever men's stuff, physical fitness, or how men should live, you know, but is it not a lot of people talk about it from the Christian faith, right? And if they do, I don't know if they talk about it in the way that we do. I mean, we're doing something that's a little bit against the grain, where we're talking about, you know, self-defense, tactical stuff with a Christian perspective. I think it's very niche. I think it's going to be different. I think we both have a lot to bring to the table. Derek's got, you know, a lot of, you know, experience and skills in his line of work, you know, from construction now to, you know, teaching tactical skills. I have a finance background, the military background. I think we have a lot to bring to the table, and a lot of our experiences that I think we have a calling, and we, you know, he had a, you know, almost a vision to start a podcast. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I'm like, man, I feel like I listen to a lot of people, and it's just like stuff that they just spit out from like their head, and they just, you know, from what experience, and I'm not saying that I'm more qualified than anyone, like, I mean, by any means, but, you know, just I think we have a lot to offer, and
I would say just stepping out in faith, you know, because I felt this has been on my heart for a while, and I just want to, you know, like Ephesians 4:12-13 basically talks about that, for the equipping and the building up of the body of Christ, so that we all can reach the fullness of Christ. So that's like the goal of this podcast, is to build men up into the image of Christ, and till we all reach the fullness. So that's the goal here, is to build people up. We want to help. We're not seeking any type of monetary gain. We just solely want to see men succeed, first and foremost, in their Christian lives, but also in life in general. You know, we want to see people reach their callings and reach, you know, be rooted and established in who they are and who God has made them to be. So yeah, that's the goal of this podcast, and hopefully y'all, you know, you guys are finding that here. Again, like, engage, man. You know, if you got something to complain about, feel free to drop it in there. I mean, like Nisha said, we're thick-skinned. I don't care. You know, I'll let stuff roll off my back plenty of times. So, but yeah, man, I thank you guys so much for hanging out with us for I guess an hour. But
yeah, it's been that long.
But man, yeah, we got so much more coming, man. Just stay tuned, stick around, and like I said, you want to hear something, like get an opinion on self-defense, or If you want to hear something covered, yeah, let us know. But this has been the Savage Discipleship Podcast, guys. God bless.
Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, God bless.
Yes, sir.